Yo guys, Jonathan here, and I'm gonna say the Galaxy Note 8 is getting way too much hate, like way too much. Now by far the biggest critique and shot fired I've seen taken against the Note 8 is that it's an overhyped S8 Plus with an S Pen, a dual camera, for some reason a slightly smaller battery, more RAM, and I'm not gonna lie, at the Note 8 event I jokingly called it an S8 Plus Plus.
What am I reacting to? The S8 Plus Plus?
You're reacting to it?
Sorry.
In actuality though, that really isn't the case. Yeah, you are paying more for the Note 8, but that is because you are getting more, minus the battery. If we were to break this down into its simplest form, no one's gonna yell at a cheeseburger for being a glorified hamburger. Are they similar? Yes, but you know they're different and you have no problem paying extra because it's an option. Same thing at Chipotle. You want guac, you are ponying up the cash, and I guess in some strange way what I'm trying to say is S Pen equals avocado. Ultimately, in some weird way, Samsung has almost kind of screwed themselves by having too many options. If we're being honest, the only reason Samsung's Plus models exist is to compete with Apple and their Plus model phones. For simplicity's sake, imagine there was no S8 Plus, just the S8 that was their smaller flagship, and then in turn, we had to wait for the Note 8 as their bigger flagship. Conversely, after what happened last year, Samsung could have easily killed off the Note lineup and brought the S Pen over to the S8 Plus, but something about that really just wouldn't have felt right because ultimately, what makes a Note is the S Pen, and that's how it's always been. So mini rant aside, I actually really like the Note 8, and by far what stands out to me most with this, of course, is that giant, beautiful display. It is big and it is beautiful. This here is a 6.3 inch display, and again, it's not much bigger than the S8 Plus, which sizes in at 6.2 inches, but the thing we gotta get out of our heads is that displays between the Note 8 and the S8 Plus are not gonna be deciding factors. Again, it comes down to the S Pen, to the dual cameras, but regardless, the Note 8 has a beautiful display. You guys know I love what Samsung did with their Infinity displays. Not only does it look fantastic just simply using the phone, but of course consuming media, whether looking at photos, video, and on top of that, aesthetically, I think it takes these phones to the next level. And honestly, I think so far they're the best looking phones of this year. Your move next, Apple. Now specs wise, one thing that separates the Note 8 from the S8 Plus and S8 for that matter is RAM. This is packing 6 gigabytes inside, which makes sense because the Note has always kind of been known as that multitasking machine. Speaking of multitasking, being able to use multiple apps simultaneously in separate windows isn't new, but what is the ability to create app pairs. So instead of opening an app, running through the process every single time, you can actually pair up apps that you use most frequently, and from there it is only one step, and I think that is awesome. Switching gears, one weird thing spec-wise with the Note 8, again, is battery capacity. Not only is it smaller than last year's Note, it's also smaller than the S8 Plus, which kind of leaves you scratching your head. The Note 8 is a bigger phone, and whether it's just barely bigger, it is still bigger. So the fact that it has a smaller battery really doesn't make sense. And again, as much as the Note has kind of been synced up with multitasking, I think the Note has been synonymous with big battery life, so I can see why people will be upset here. Past that though, I think there are still a ton of enticing elements with Note 8, and there's not a whole lot you can complain about. You have USB-C, a headphone jack, quick charging, wireless charging, water resistance, micro SD card expansion. Overall, it is a really solid package. So from there, I think we all know what S Pen is about, what it can do, so I first want to focus on the dual cameras because that is what really impressed me. You have dual 12 megapixel sensors, a wide angle lens, and then a telephoto lens, but what makes this really special is the fact that both of these have OIS, and that makes a big difference. Speaking of stabilization, I do want to slightly call out Samsung for their OIS video demo at the Note 8 event. If you watched it, they compared the Note 8 against an iPhone, but something was clearly off. Like, could you imagine the behind the scenes on that? Jokes aside though, we have clearly seen and know what the S8 and S8 Plus cameras are capable of, and I think with the Note 8 it kind of takes things to the next level. Now one of the biggest camera features on the Note 8 is live focus, and yes, some people are going to say it is very similar to portrait mode on the iPhone 7 Plus and really every other dual camera out there for that matter, but in particular what I love about this is not only the quality but the flexibility. There definitely are other smartphones out there that give you the ability to edit things in post, but that usually comes with a sacrifice in quality. As far as Note 8 goes, it's not perfect and it's not going to work every single time, but as a whole, it is super impressive. The ability to adjust the amount of blur, to really fine tune and dial in and find that point of clarity and both naturalness is really cool. But on top of that, what I think is the coolest thing about this is you have the ability to go back at any time and view the wide angle version of that photo, which is crazy. Now beyond live focus mode, in terms of the camera as a whole, no surprise, it is really good. Here's an example of jumping from the wide angle lens to the telephoto lens, and yes, you do lose a little bit of light with an f-stop of 2.4 on the telephoto lens, but look at the pictures, you can see both are really nice. In this picture here, this is the telephoto lens, but what stands out to me here is the sharpness and the detail. It was just about sunset, so you can really see that sun beaming down on the floor, but beyond that, the detail in the leaves and the concretes, I think one might call it crispy. In this picture here in particular, the dynamic range is really impressive. We see the blue of the sky, we see the clouds, we see all the lighting of the signs, nothing's blown out, and overall it's just a really well-rounded photo. Now, as things started to get a little darker, this was one of my favorite shots. Not a ton of light in the foreground, just the light bulb itself, but we still see the clouds, we see a little bit of that sun blown out, and overall it is just a beautiful picture. As far as the front-facing cameras, I think Samsung has done an amazing job the last couple years, and again, nothing has changed here with the Note 8. This is how this shot looks on a red camera, and here is how it looks with the front-facing camera of the Note 8. Jumping over to an outdoor selfie, again, great dynamic range, great sharpness. I love the fact that you have a wide angle lens, and really, there's not much more to say than great job Samsung on the cameras. Video quality wise, here's a quick example of how that looks, how the stabilization works, and also I'm gonna shut my mouth for a second so you can hear the microphone quality. So from there, I kind of want to round things out with S Pen because again, that is ultimately what makes the Note a Note. It has definitely evolved a ton over the years, but there really wasn't a huge jump in features from this year over last year, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Smart Select and Screen Write are useful as always. Live Message, while it isn't necessarily original, is actually a lot of fun to use with a physical pen. You kind of just draw out your message, but it's nice having that extra bit of accuracy with that physical pen. You can play it back, make sure you didn't screw it up, and then send it off. Definitely though, one of my favorite features with S Pen is the ability to integrate that with Samsung's always on display. If you just need to jot something down quickly, or you need to remind yourself, you don't have to go into the phone, just bust out the pen, write it down, and that it will stay there as a reminder in your face. Overall, the Galaxy Note 8, while it's not perfect, it is a damn impressive phone. And if you know what you want that S Pen, but you kind of been skeptical because people have been a little too hard on the Note 8, forget the haters, grab it, you will enjoy it. I wanna give a huge shout out to my boy Benjamin, who I met out in London, super humble, super hardworking, but also has a really underrated YouTube channel. Definitely check him out. I will link him down below. He actually helped me get a hold of the Note 8 a little bit early, so this entire video is thanks to him. Thank you guys for watching. This is Jonathan, and I'll catch you guys later.